Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope everyone is well. Kind of cool here in Melbourne, Australia. Today, I want to talk about how we maximize success or ace virtual interviews. You know, times are changing. We're working from home now. That is the gift from COVID. And you can, do those negotiations with your boss. Before, we had quite a lot of resistance to working from home. But now there's a balance and people are having those conversations where they can work from home or work part of the time from home and part of the time in the office. But one of the other things that's happened is that it's also led to the realization for many companies that there is money to be saved and time to be saved. And so, especially in recruitment now, many things are also happening online. The virtual interview has gained prominence, and more people are interviewing, virtually as opposed to in person. But there are a few things that we need to get right with a virtual interview. I think there's a benefit to both in-person interview and to virtual interview. Certainly with virtual interviews, the time saving, not having to commute in, all of that. But there's still a few things that we have to get right. So that's what I want to talk about today. As far as I'm concerned, and this is a pattern I've seen because it's happened to a few of my clients recently. So the very first tip I want to give you is to test the technology beforehand. I've had a couple of clients lately who call me on the day they're supposed to be interviewing, and then they said, oh my God, the tech went wrong, and we had to postpone or we had to reschedule the interview for a later date or postpone it for later in the same day. So the tip for testing the technology is obviously make sure that your internet bandwidth is strong. Test the sound, of your microphone, and make sure that the camera angle, on Zoom or Skype, whatever you're going to be doing your interview on, that is angled properly. Because what I've seen a lot of, and even when I practice with my clients, often the camera is angled downwards. And so you end up being able to see up their nostrils. And that's not a fantastic thing to be looking at, especially for the interviewer, for, 45 minutes to an hour. So always test the technology beforehand, make sure everything's working, the sound is working, that your internet bandwidth is strong, and that you've got a good camera angle. The other thing is, have a neutral background. So we don't know what people like or don't like. So sometimes, we can have a philosophy in our background. We can have a rock band, all of these things, but they may not resonate with your interviewer. So try to have a neutral background, a blank wall or a virtual background. I find that nature scenes of waterfalls or trees, things like that seem to be neutral, and they seem to be calming, and they seem to be pleasant for most people. So I would suggest you get a really neutral, uplifting kind of background when you're doing your virtual interview. Another tip is don't have your current company's logo or virtual background. I have seen that with a couple of clients, and I've had to remind them to make sure that they turn off the current company's logo. If you're going for an interview with a new company, you don't want to have your current company's logo on as a background for your interview with a new company, right? It's just little things like that that can make a difference. I mean, remember, the market is tight. Companies can pick and choose because many people have lost their jobs, which means the market is flooded, so they can pick and choose. So you want to do the little things right so that you get that company. Wear professional attire. So obviously, especially on the top part of the body, right? You want to make sure that you're looking professional, smart and professional. For guys, it can be a nice shirt. For ladies, a blouse, but something that makes you certainly look professional from the top half of your body. If you're sitting in your PJ pants, no problem. Nobody can really see it because most virtual interviews, people are only going to see the top half. But make sure that you're in professional attire. And then prepare in advance. So those things that we used to do for in-person interviews still apply, right? Research the company. Make sure you know some of the company's mission statements, their financial positioning. All of those things can be found on most company sites. Another tip I give people is to look at the company's Twitter handle or Facebook or LinkedIn page, or if they have an Instagram handle, look at that as well. Because here's the thing, companies often tweet or they put some update on those social media handles. And if you've looked at what they've put up the day before, and you kind of weave that into your answer, people pay attention. They go, oh, how did they know that? Well, you've gone and you've actually looked at what their most current update is. And sometimes people have done an update on what their social enterprise is or their philanthropic mission is, or that they actively supporting something. And if you find a way to weave that into an answer, you demonstrate that you are taking an interest in that company, and that's always going to count in your favor. Make sure you cross the top 20 questions. I have compiled the top 20 questions. If you're interested in receiving that, comment below the video. I'm happy to send that out. And make sure when you're answering your questions that you, especially behavioral questions, that you're using what I call the SAO model, which is situation, action, outcome model, where you describe the situation, you describe the actions you took and the outcome of those actions. And you keep your answers brief and to the point. So if you're talking for longer than 2.5 minutes on each answer, you're talking too long. And this you only get really good at by practicing. Practice. Film yourself, practice in front of the camera, talk to the dog, get your partner to sit with you and go through those questions and make sure that you're timing your answers and that you become more and more succinct and to the point when you're answering. Build rapport with your interviewer. So, and here's where I encourage people to include some personal stuff in interview answers. So especially when they ask you, tell me about yourself, don't be like a professional robot who doesn't share anything personal, right? You want to show the human side of you as well. You want to show that you're a well-balanced individual, that you're not just a workaholic, that you're not simply a professional robot, that there is humanness to you. And so share some things. You can share about, when they ask you, tell me about yourself, you can share about the fact that you might have a spouse and you might have a couple of kids and you coach the soccer team, whatever it is, weave something personal in so that you can build that human rapport and not simply be a slick professional robot. Because one of my clients actually got feedback from an interview that said they loved his professionalism, they loved his answers, but they couldn't connect with him because he was so slick, so professional. So, those are things that people are going to be watching to see if you're the right culture fit. Keep eye contact at all times, because remember, when we're in person, we're able to look around, we're able to watch the body language, we're able to connect through different ways, different body language nuances. But when you're on a virtual interview, the only way you can really fully connect with someone is to hold eye contact. And the eye contact has to be through the camera. So you don't want to be, darting your eyes upwards to the sides, down too much. Try to hold eye contact with the camera. So the people watching you on the Zoom or on Skype or business Skype can actually see your eyes and can see your animation. Be lively, be animated, obviously not too animated, be professional, but bring a brightness to your interview energy. And then have at least 3 questions prepared that you're going to ask at the end of the interview if the opportunity arises. In some cases, sometimes with those real the AI interviews, which is done only via camera, no person on Zoom, it's an AI software that does the interview, obviously there isn't always opportunity for you to ask questions. But most virtual interviews are happening. Human beings at the other end of the camera, also on Zoom, also on Skype. And so have at least 3 questions prepared. If you are given the opportunity to ask the questions, then ask your questions. Because it shows interest. It shows that you've taken the time to prepare some questions, that you haven't simply come to the interview ready to answer a bunch of questions without thinking further about how that company is going to also fit for your long-term career goals. You always have to demonstrate that mutual interest. You have to be interested in the company, and you want to demonstrate that you also have researched the company. So you've got some questions to ask too, really important. And then a follow-up, send a thank you 24 hours of having your interview. So a lot of people do that via email or text, but here's a tip. Send I think it would be a lot more personal if you actually make a phone call. So if you do get the interviewer's phone number, and most of them do provide the mobile number for when you're coming into the interview, so in case there's any problems, if a mobile number or a telephone number has been provided, pick up the phone and call the recruiter and call the interviewer or the hiring interviewer and, express a personal and heartfelt thank you for the opportunity that you got to interview with that company. Really simple little tips, but they make a big difference. And so, in conclusion, if you're like many of us, I know there's an energy at the moment where people are kind of over the Zoom meetings and they're over the virtual meetings and they miss being in person. But even if you are feeling that way, an interview is not the place to bring that energy. So at all times, be professional, be authentic, demonstrate that you're comfortable with virtual meetings because, we all know going forward, we may have to continue the practice of virtual meetings. And one of the ways you demonstrate that to a new or potential company is to be really comfortable in your virtual interview. And above all, as I make sure the technology is working properly, make sure that that's working properly. Hold your eye contact with the camera. Be comfortable, be professional, and do your follow-up. Do your thank you follow-up always. Those are important things to do. So those are my tips around maximizing your success in a virtual interview. I hope it's helpful. And as I said, if anyone is interested in receiving, the 20 common questions that I've prepared, I'm happy to share. Just send me a DM or comment below, and I'll get that across to you. Have a wonderful day, everyone, as always. Be well and stay. Bye for now.